Thanks for tuning in. Ham Talk Live will be on the air shortly. Please stand by. This episode of Ham Talk Live is brought to you by Tower Electronics. For connectors, cables, and more, call 920-435-2973 or visit pl-259.com. And by ICOM. Heard it, worked it, logged it. Visit www.icomamerica.com/amateur for more information about ICOM radios.
It's Ham Radio.
Hey, good evening, everyone. It's time for Ham Talk Live, episode number 235, the new Drake radio exhibit at the Voice of America Museum of Broadcasting, recorded live on Thursday, November 5th, 2020. I'm your host, Neil Rapp, WB9VPG. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Ham Talk Live. Tonight we're joined by Adrick, K8CJY, and Lee Hite, K8CLI, and we will take your calls a little later in the show. Last week, Rob Sherwood, NC0B, was here to talk about the performance of some of the latest radios on the market. If you missed the show, you can listen anytime at hamtalklive.com or your favorite podcast app or YouTube, or you can catch the rebroadcast of Ham Talk Live on WTWW. That's 5085 a.m., and that's on Saturday afternoons at about 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time. So get your questions ready to go about some Drake stuff and the VOA Museum. If you're listening to us live on Thursday night, you can give us a call a little later on in the show. I'll go ahead and give you the number now, though, so you can have it ready to go and ready to punch in. It's 859-982 7373. Again, that phone number to call later on in the show, 859-982-7373. You can also send a question via Twitter. The Twitter handle is at Ham Talk Live, and I'll be checking that throughout the evening as well. And I'll be back with Jay and Lee right after this word from ICOM America right here on Ham Talk Live. Ham for the holidays. ICOM's new ID52A and IC705 give hours of fun and enjoyment working your favorite bands this holiday season. ICOM's newest handheld amateur radio is the ID52A. Larger radio, larger color display, and louder audio. This VHF-UHF digital transceiver is much more than just a replacement for the ID51, but also a new way of communicating. This color display is 2.3 inches for exceptional viewability, and the audio is 80% louder. This multifunction dual-band D-Star transceiver supports DR mode for easy access to local repeaters based on internal GPS information, as well as terminal and access point modes. The ID52A also has Bluetooth for audio and data control, providing improved mobility and control. And for the first time in the amateur radio industry, you can now send photos from a connected Android device. Other features include wideband receiver with a guaranteed range of 144 to 148 and 440 to 450 megahertz. VHF on both bands, UHF on both bands, and one of each with the dual DV mode. Integrated GPS with grid square locator, micro SD card slot, micro USB USB for data transfer, programming, and charge, and it's IPX7 waterproof. The ID52A is the perfect companion to the IC705. Both use compatible batteries and headsets, and you can use the same Android app for D-Star operation. The IC705 is the perfect sidekick for hams that like to enjoy what both the great indoors and outdoors have to offer. It's the perfect QRP companion. Base station features and functionality at the tip of your fingers in a portable package covering HF, 6 meters, 2 meters, and 70 centimeters. This compact rig weighs in at just over 2 pounds with RF direct sampling for most of the HF band and IF sampling for frequencies above 25 megahertz. It has a 4.3-inch touchscreen with live band scope and waterfall, 5 watts with the battery BP272 or 10 watts with the power supply, sideband CW, AM, FM, and full D-Star functions with a touchscreen, micro USB connector, Bluetooth, wireless LAN, integrated GPS and GPS logger, a micro SD card slot. The speaker mic HM243 comes standard and supports QRP operations. And the perfect accessory for the 705 is the optional backpack LC192 with a special compartment for your IC705 and room for accessories for soda activations or a day in the park, and it's shipping now. Visit icomamerica.com/amateur for more information on ICOM radios.
If a man says something in the woods and there are no women there, is he still wrong? You're listening to Ham Talk Live with Neil Rapp.
Welcome back to Ham Talk Live. Thanks to ICOM for sponsoring the show. Make sure you check out all their equipment. The new 705, the new ID92A. Check that out at icomamerica.com/amateur. Tonight, my guests are Adrick and Lee Hite. Adrick, K8CJY, has been active in amateur radio since 1961. He's a 56-plus year veteran of the broadcast industry. In 2013, Jay retired from Harris Corporation as their vice president of broadcast technology, but continues as an industry consultant specializing in digital television systems, television spectrum issues, and the television spectrum repack. He's been awarded the Television Engineering Achievement Award by the National Association of Broadcasters, a fellow in the Society of Motion Picture and Television Engineers, the IEEE Broadcast Television Society, and the Society of Broadcast Engineers. Jay serves as a board member of the Voice of America Museum of Broadcasting. Lee Hite, K8CLI, is one of the lead docents and a board member at the National Voice of America Museum of Broadcasting. Lee is a retired electronics engineer with a passion for investigating technical issues, occasionally surrounded with mystery and often bridging several fields of technology. Lee was first licensed in 1954 and is active with the Mason, Ohio, and Warren County CERT teams, and he also engineers wind chimes and biomass briquette. So Lee is the jack of all trades, and if you get a chance to visit the museum, Lee is the guy you want to talk to because he has the history of everything. So Jay and Lee, welcome back to the show.
Well, thank you, Neil. Good to be here tonight.
Yeah, thank you, Neil. Appreciate the invitation to come back, and we're looking forward to the program.
Well, I think, if I remember right, you've both been on the show, but not at the same time. So we've got you both at the same time here. Well, we're going to start off talking a little bit about some of the history of Drake, and then we're going to get into the new exhibit that's been revamped here. So we're going to start off with Jay. And Jay, just give us a brief history of the whole Drake thing that was in Southwest Ohio and how that all got started.
Okay, very good. Well, Bob Drake was a native of Cincinnati and attended the University of Cincinnati. studied electrical engineering, and he graduated during the Depression in the latter part of the 1930s. He went to work right away for Dayton Radio, a company that built radio products, and was there a short time, and then moved on to work with Bill Lear in Lear's aviation department. And he was at Lear until 1943. Of course, the war was going on, and he took a leap of faith and started his own company, R.L. Drake, based in Dayton, Ohio, a very small operation. But he was able to secure a number of military contracts to build filters and some power supplies and some test equipment, and even a VHF receiver. So the company flourished under Bob during the war years, and then of course the war is over, and the military is not buying products. So he had to kind of dig in and figure out how to keep the company going, and it was a pretty tough time for the better part of almost 10 years. He resorted to spring contacts for General Electric for relays and that type of electrical component. Did some chokes and coils and other components for Delco. Delco, of course, being based in Dayton, Ohio at that time. And even resorted to building lamps for SS Kresge. I know Lee would love to find one of those lamps to add to the collection, but he hasn't been able to turn one up yet. So in the early 50s, Bob, being a ham, came up with a couple of amateur radio products. The first products were filters, because this new thing called television had a problem with interference from some ham transmitters, and he was very good at designing filters. So he designed both high-pass filters for the television receivers and low-pass filters to put on the output of the ham transmitters. And I definitely recall having a Drake filter on the output of my rig back in the 1960s. The other products that he came up with, a phone patch and Q multiplier to improve receiver performance. Along about 1956, Bob was really struggling to keep the company going, and it resulted in some health issues. And while he was out confined to home, he designed a receiver for single sideband, and that receiver, known as the 1A, he built a prototype, tried to sell the design under a license to manufacture to a number of companies, the old standards of the time, National and Hammerland and Hallicrafters, and even took it to RCA. None of them were really interested. So then he took it to Gibby up at Universal Service in Columbus, Ohio. And Gibby said, well, I'll tell you what. He said, I will give you an order for the first 100 pieces. And he also went over to Shrupco Electronics, which was based in Dayton. And the fellow that ran Shrupco, Hyde Rubel, made a similar commitment. So the first 200 units were spoken for. And he was able to deliver first product in the latter part of 1957. It was quite an advancement. First of all the receivers in the time, starting with the big HRO receivers, and of course the Collins 75A4, most of them were not designed for single sideband. 75A4, of course, was. but very, very pricey and very large. Not so with the 1A. The 1A was the size of a typical rural mailbox, kind of shaped like that. It was narrow, tall, and about the same depth as a mailbox. It was lightweight, under 20 pounds, 12-tube radio, and designed specifically for single sideband, because Bob had picked up on the benefits of single sideband and really thought it was a great approach. So the receiver was an instant success, particularly out here in the Midwest. It took off and was the start of Bob's real venture into amateur radio products. They followed that up in 1959 with the Drake 2A, and shortly thereafter in 1961, the Drake 2B, all very familiar products for those of us who were around at that time in amateur radio. The 2B, of course, was probably one of the best sellers of those three products, and I personally had a 2B for a period of time in my early ham radio days. So the company moved from Dayton down to Miamisburg, Ohio. Miamisburg being a smaller town located southwest of downtown Dayton, Ohio. Started out in the Baum Opera House building adjacent to the Opera House, where they did their manufacturing of the 1A and the 2A and so forth. And that lasted for a while, but they needed a bigger facility as the orders came in. And at the same time, they set about designing a transceiver, a transmitter-receiver package. Of course, Collins was out with the KWM1 and KWM2, but they were, again, very pricey, and Bob was looking for something that was affordable, kind of like the Henry Ford of automobiles, something that would be affordable by the common man. He had an engineer by the name of Sullivan that was working for him, and they set about developing what became the TR3. And as that matured into a product, it was very obvious that the space they had at the Baum Opera House was not big enough. So they found new digs over at 540 Richard Street, not too far from the Opera House, and a very famous address in Miamisburg, where the majority of the amateur radio products were built. So that's kind of the start of things. The TR3 came out in 1963. So the 3-line, strictly the TR3, then morphed into the 4-line and started with the R4 receiver, and then the T4, which was a companion transmitting device that slaved to the R4 receiver, and then, of course, the T4X, which was a standalone transmitter. So those products went through several iterations. The R4 became the R4A, eventually the R4B, and the R4C, the T4, T4A, T4B, T4C, and so forth. As the company matured and developed with those products, there were a lot of add-ons that were developed, such as the transverters, the TC6 and the TC2 that did VHF transverting from 14 megahertz. They had a converter called the CC1, actually a converter cabinet with plug-in modules for 6 and 2 meters and a calibrator and power supply. And then, of course, things like watt meters, antenna tuners, and a very unique product that they came out with in the the mid-'60s was the C4, which was a station control. The C4 was a highly integrated device that had a phone patch, had the rotor controller for a high gain or a ham-M type rotator. It had switching, power switching, so you could turn everything on and off from one common point. Had audio switching, a number of features all integrated into a single box. That was very, very unique. Also, a watt meter was part of it. So that was a unique item for ham radio at the time. So you could build a complete station with all of the products from Drake and have a very functional 160 all the way through 2 meter operation if you had all of the right boxes. Also, they developed 2 more transceivers, the TR4, and it came out in a number of different flavors over the period of time, TR4, TR4C, TR4CW, which was a version that incorporated a lot of CW functions. And then, of course, for 6 meters, the TR6. So those are all very popular products that came out throughout the era of the 60s. The 4 line actually continued into the early 70s. 1974, I think, was pretty much the end of the 4 line. And at that point in time, it was seeing quite a bit of competition from the Japanese products, which were solid state. All the 4 line products were primarily tube, but as they progressed through towards the C version, there were a number of solid state additions, such as the PTO and other parts of the receiver and, for that matter, in the transmitter. But it was not really a solid state rig. It was just a few additions of solid state. So the progress from there was to go to a solid state radio, and that work was the TR5 and eventually the 7 line, the TR7, and that was an R7 that also went with it. And of course, they for the 4 line, they also developed an amplifier, the L4, L4B, which I would point out that we have virtually all of those components on display as part of the Drake display out at the museum. We'll talk more about that as we move through the evening. Lee's done a fabulous job of pulling everything together. So, unfortunately, Bob. Well, first of all, fortunately, Bob pulled in some great engineers to work with the company. One of the young engineers who started actually as a high school student was Steve Kugler. And Steve went on eventually to own part of the company long after Bob had passed away. So Bob was quite a boss, kind of boss I think that you'd want to work for. He was very personable and a fellow that cared about his employees and really supported their work and their activities. And if they had problems, he was a guy that was there to help them. So Bob developed prostate cancer in the latter part of the 1970s and passed away, I believe, in 1978. Might have been a little bit earlier than that. Anyway, so the company was left to his wife. His wife Bob and his wife had 3 sons and a daughter. One of the sons, Peter, took over the company. The daughter, Nancy, also joined the company, and they carried on the operation. But the amateur radio activities kind of started winding down in the latter part of the 70s. First of all, there were a lot of things going on in the electronic world. The home satellite business was beginning to take off, and they developed some products for that area. They had also developed some commercial gear for shipboard radio stations, shipboard maritime operations, where at that point in time, every ship, ocean-going vessel had to have an HF communications link. This is obviously pre-satellite communications days. So the company started to outgrow the Richard Street plant, and Peter purchased some land over in Franklin, Ohio, and built a new plant to house the operation, particularly because of the satellite work that they were getting into. I'd point out, by the way, that as they were developing the TR7, there were two guys that went on to fame in another electronic area, both being hams, by the way. One is Jim Jager. Jim was a very talented, and still is a very talented design engineer who worked on the TR7, and then Mike Valentine. Mike is a very active ham today. He has his own company, Valentine Research, which builds radar detectors. But Mike and Jim left Drake and started Cincinnati Microwave, which made the Escort radar detector. So there were a lot of folks that came out of the Drake operation, as well as those that were there for a lengthy period of time. So the amateur radio products wound down. The satellite products became the mainstay. And another area that they went into was to develop cable TV products, but not for the big MSOs, the multiple system operators, but rather for the smaller cable systems. Like, for example, if you lived in an apartment building and the apartment complex put their own satellite antennas in and their own cable distribution and modulators for channels, as well as channel converters to bring in the local stations. The correct name for that type of product is SMA TV, small market antenna TV. And they developed a whole series of those products, both in the analog world and later as television went digital. They developed a series of digital cable products. And that's kind of how Drake ended up being sold eventually to a company called Blonder Tongue. Blonder Tongue was or is a company out of New Jersey that made modulators and channel converters and demodulators and a lot of other products that are used in the cable television industry. And they ended up acquiring R.L. Drake in 2012, which is kind of the lead-in to where the Drake collection at the VoA came about. Bob Drake was very proud of the products.
That is where we need to take a break. We're already over time for our break. So we're going to come back and we're going to take a look at the exhibit itself and where that came from and take your calls right after this word from Tower Electronics right here on Ham Talk Live.
I'm sorry to bother you, but I'm having an antenna party and I ran out of PL259s.
Oh, come in.
Thank you.
Would silver-plated PL259s from Tower Electronics be too good for your guests?
Those will be fine. Thank you. You saved my life the other night.
Oh, the PL259s from Tower Electronics?
Yes, they were very successful at the antenna party. My antenna works like a charm.
Then how can you ever thank me?
I'll try to think of something.
Don't be caught without PL259s. Visit Tower Electronics at a ham fest near you, or visit them online anytime at pl-259.com, or call 920-435-2973. They have adapters, cables, antennas, soldering supplies, and meters too.
Join the conversation. Give us a call at 859-982-7373. Again, the number to call is 859-982-7373. Or, if you'd rather type than talk, tweet us at Ham Talk Live. Now, here's Neil Rapp with more Ham Talk Live.
You're listening to Ham Talk Live, the most popular podcast with the words ham, talk, and live in the title. Here's your host, Neil Rapp.
Welcome back to Ham Talk Live. Tower Electronics is going to be in Bedford, Indiana this weekend, and actually had dinner with Scott and Jill today. It's great to see them from Tower Electronics. They're just down the road here, and Bedford, Indiana Ham Fest, Mitchell, Indiana, November 7th. That's Saturday. And by the way, I just found out today. You know, we were having dinner and we talked about a lot of things and caught up on a lot of things. But I was able to talk Scott into a free bag with every purchase at Bedford this weekend. So there you go. No, seriously, he said, if you say you heard this on Ham Talk Live tonight, you will get a free gift at the Bedford Ham Fest. So if you see Tower Electronics at Bedford, tell them you heard this on Ham Talk Live, and you'll get a free surprise. Coming up in their schedule, they actually have several Ham Fests as long as they keep going here. Fort Walton Beach, Florida, next weekend, November 13th and 14th. November 20th and 21st, Montgomery, Alabama, December 4th and 5th in Ocala, Florida, and December 11th and 12th in Plant City, Florida. But you can visit them anytime, anywhere at pl-259.com. And Ham Talk Live's on the air every Thursday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, right here at hamtalklive.com. Be sure to check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And before we get back to Lee and Jay talking about the exhibit, it is time for the Ham Talk Live Ham Radio Joke of the Week within 9 GSU.
Now it's time for the Ham Talk Live Ham Radio Joke of the Week, the part of the show where Rick tells us a ham radio joke. The Ham Talk Live Ham Radio Joke of the Week is brought to you by QRM Labs. Now, here's Rick Garrett in 9 GSU with today's Ham Talk Live Joke of the Week.
I inadvertently offended a fellow ham, so I sent him an apology in CW. It was in remorse code.
This has been the Ham Talk Live Ham Radio Joke of the Week with Rick Garrett in 9 GSU. Tune in again next week for another joke from Rick.
Okay, there we go. Oh my goodness. Remorse code. Well, there it is. Thank you, Rick. You'll be back again next week for another joke of the week. So we'll take your calls here in just a little bit, but we still have a ton of stuff to talk about here. So we're going to try to move through this quickly so we have some time to get some calls here. But Jay, you were leading right into, and this is a tremendous story of how all this got started and what happened to the business. But that really leads into the origins of this collection that's now at the Voice of America Museum in Westchester, or Cincinnati, Ohio, if you will. So tell us a little bit about how all of that transitions into the exhibit.
So in 2012, when the company was sold, a lot of people recognized the fact that the collection that was on display in the lobby at the Franklin facility, which really started with Bob squirreling away one of everything that came off the line in the closet. It was beautifully displayed in the lobby of the company, and realized that Blondertongue really had no interest in that collection, and it really needed to remain in southwestern Ohio to memorialize the great company that Bob Drake started. So we made a pitch to Blondertongue, and had a lot of help from Steve Kubler and Bill Frost, two former employees of R.L. Drake, and we were able to strike a deal for a permanent loan of the collection to the museum. And actually, Steve and Bob brought it down and helped initially get it onto display. Now, it sat there for a number of years without a lot of guidance. And then along comes this guy by the name of Lee Hite. And I think he should pick up and tell us a little bit more about what he's done.
Yeah, Lee, you put this together, but recently you really did a nice revamp on this. So tell us about the changes that you've made to this exhibit.
Yeah, sure. We'll do here, Neil. And thanks, Jay. As Jay mentioned, when it came down from Miamisburg out of the lobby for R.L. Drake, it was an enormous collection. We were somewhat space limited, and so everything in that collection got pushed into 3 display cabinets. And when you see the pictures from the R.L. Drake lobby, they had very large display cabinets. They had room for all of this. Unfortunately, in our display cabinets, it was very crowded. Things were just kind of pushed in there. You could see them, but it was awfully crowded. So we took on the project of taking everything out of the cabinets, and I didn't get rid of, I put up in our archives all the duplicates. We had a lot of duplicates. And so I wanted to keep just individual items that were representative of when they were introduced. And so they've all been staged chronologically from the time the A1, well, actually from the time of the filters. We have, I think, one of every filter that Bob designed. So we have the filters, and then beginning with the A1 receiver all the way through the digital phase, spread out. And the unusual thing I did here that I have not done anywhere else in the museum is there's signage on each piece of equipment, the model number and the year that it was introduced. The unusual thing is I also include the weight of the device, and that's for a very specific reason. One of the things that Drake became very famous for was solving the weight problem that was deliberately designed by Hammerlin, National, and Helicrafters to provide stability for their receivers. Their local oscillator in the receiver was the traditional resonant circuit that you would tune through to do the band pass tuning. And if you would bump the case, I think anyone that's used an old receiver would kind of get familiar with the wobbling sound that could occur as an instability in the receiver just because the physical coil or capacitor was moving a little bit. Bob Drake did something highly innovative, and he came up with this phase lock loop. And that reduced, Hammerlin and Helicopters and National deliberately made their receivers heavy. Just as an example, when you see the collection, I have at one end, I have a Helicopters receiver that weighs 85 pounds. At the other end, I have a National that weighs 95 pounds. And Bob Drake, when he did the A1 receiver, as Jay mentioned, it's lightweight. It's 19 pounds. And technically, specification-wise and performance-wise, far exceeded the performance of those three receivers in stability and performance also. So one of the reasons for putting weight on all this stuff was weight was a really big deal. And it's nice to see these smaller products perform as well or better than the great big heavy ones. So it's nice to see the spread of products and innovativeness that was going on at R.L. Drake at the time. When you come to the museum, you'll see a lot of other things. We have a lot of other amateur, a Collins collection and a collection of other items. You'll see those, but one of the things you might consider doing is when you look at all of this Drake equipment that's produced, they had a linear, but they could produce a kilowatt, is then step into the other room and see what it takes to produce 250,000 watts. We have opened up the Collins transmitter, and you can literally walk through that, and it's an interesting tour. Just getting B+. How do you get 17,000 volts to the plate on a final amplifier tube? So look at the Drake and then go over and look at the Collins, and you'll get a real education on the evolution of power in the business. So that's kind of a snapshot, Neil.
Yeah, and one thing that I really like about the Collins, the big one, which was in use at the Voice of America facility, is that you've gone through and just, labeled everything and pinpointed everything to where you can see every part, and it really makes that transmitter a lot more interesting when you can see just exactly where everything goes. And it's something you need to see if you can get there. Well, Jay, I know that that collection from Drake was not a totally complete collection. I know that most of those were like the first one off of the line, but it wasn't complete, and there are some pretty rare items in there, and some of those are yours. So tell us about some of the items that people are going to see in this exhibit that they may not be able to see anywhere else.
Well, first of all, we've got some of the World War II products. So we've got a power supply, we've got filters, and I think a piece of test equipment, products that you would not find in the typical amateur radio collection. Again, Lee's looking very hard for that Kresge lamp. But I have a fairly decent collection of C-line, 4C line gear, and an L4B, and, of course, the TC6, TC2, and I have a TR6 and a TR4 and so forth. But Lee twisted my arm real hard one day at a board meeting, and I turned my L4B over, which was beautifully restored, over to the museum for display. That's not really that rare, but I do also have I would say almost a mint condition C4 station control with all of the peripherals, and Lee was able to talk that out of me too. So those are blank spots in the ham shack here, and they're on display at the museum. But happily sharing those with the ham community.
And we very much appreciate that, Jay. They're an important part of the collection.
Yeah, I didn't even remember the rotor control and phone patch and everything integrated. I do not even remember that. I remember using the 4-line at field day growing up, and but I don't even remember that one. So and phone patches just fascinated me at that point. So I'm surprised I don't remember that one.
Yeah,
Well,
we have 2 or 3 phone patches on display.
Oh, that's cool. Well, if somebody wants to come and see the exhibit, Lee, how would they do that and find out more information about the museum? And if you want to operate at the museum, how do you do that?
We are open every weekend, Saturday and Sunday, 1 to 4 p.m. And with the current COVID-19 situation, we do require a mask. And all of the personnel on duty at the time, the docents, also wear a mask. So we are trying to be very cautious and careful about the virus. And the other a good thing is that over the last several years, I've put signage on almost everything in that museum. So you can very much do a self-guided tour. We're not so much doing docent-guided tours because of the virus. They will be available to answer questions, but you can go through the Collins, the 250 kW transmitter, the control room, the Drake exhibit, and what we call the Gray History of Wireless, which are 2 rooms full of antique wireless. So Saturday and Sunday, 1 to 4 p.m., come see us, and I think you will be quite amazed at what's in that building.
It really is a treat, and bring your license along, and you can get on some of the modern equipment and a little bit of vintage equipment. But there's all kinds of modern Icon stuff in there, and some others that you can operate from the museum as well. So if you get a chance, Westchester, Ohio, north side of Cincinnati, Saturdays and Sundays, 1 to 4 Eastern time. And check them out at voamuseum.org. And it's time for your phone calls right now. So if you have a question for Jay or for Lee, give us a call at 859-982-7373. Again, it's 859-982-7373. Or you can tweet us at Ham Talk Live. And if you're listening to us on WTWW or on the podcast edition, you're not going to reach us because we're doing this on Thursday night here. And we're going to go overtime here a little bit and answer some questions. So we already have a call on the line. So let's go to the phones. Welcome to Ham Talk Live. Hello?
Hello.
Yes, you're on.
My name is... Okay. My name is David, W5XU. I'm in Covington, Louisiana, just north of New Orleans. I enjoyed the program.
Hi, David. Well, welcome. Do you have a question here for Jay or for Lee?
Well, I have a comment. One, the TR5 was actually manufactured after the introduction of the TR7.
That's correct. Yes, you're right.
TR7 came out and was very expensive, and they basically made a solid-state TR4. Oh, I hear myself on the computer. Let me turn that down. And also that they were investigating a new radio which would have taken the place of the TR7. They had a preliminary nomenclature of TR8. I know of 2 of the prototypes of that TR8. I have one of them. And the other is that they also made a prototype of a new amplifier called the L85, and also they had a kind of a modified TR7 that was, I believe, used as the test bed for the TR8, and I have that as well. All these are functional. All these are functional. However, there's no documentation. I have tried all over the world to see if I can find documentation on those radios, and they're none to be had. So I just wanted to point it out. I enjoyed the talk, and was hoping that if anyone had any of that documentation, I could get a hold of them and see if I could get some of that.
It's our understanding that the documentation for all of that was destroyed, and I'm surprised to even hear that the TR8 was out there. I understand that there was one that was actually destroyed when they cleaned out all of the amateur radio stuff a couple years after they ceased operations.
I really appreciate you calling.
Yeah, let's see here. Lee may have some kind of lead on. So if anybody has a lead on it, it's Lee. So
yeah, I appreciate you calling in. I've been looking for a TR8, and I realize they're rare, and I'm probably not going to find it. But appreciate you calling in and identifying that you have one. I think that's really great.
Is it possible you could share a picture of that with us at some point in time?
Well, remember, I can. If you give me the link, I will send you some photographs of these radios. They're not finished. They're obviously in a let's see if this will work mode. If you recall,
sure.
If you recall, the TR7 was supposed to come out with a encoder-based PTO.
Correct.
But they couldn't develop, according to what I have been told, they couldn't develop that encoder-based PTO in time to put it into the TR7. So the TR7 basically used the same PTO as the R4 line, the TR4 line. Then when it was eventually perfected and made available, they used that in the TR5. So the TR5, although it's an earlier number, it's actually a later radio that came out after the TR7. And the TR5 has that solid state encoder. I have a TR5 as well, and it's very, very stable. There aren't too many of those TR5s left because I understand closing the factory down and a big accident where TR5s were scattered all over the road. There's only a couple of hundred of those radios left.
You're very much correct, and that's one of the ones I'm looking for the collection. We do not have a TR5.
Well, every once in a while they come up for sale. If you send me your link, I will send you one that's on for sale right now. However, the performance of the TR5, except for the PTO, is not as convenient as the TR7. TR7 is a very easy, intuitive radio to use, and there's still many of those out and being used. So anyway, I just thought you may wish to know that there was a step beyond that apparently still exists. I understand that there are actually two of the prototype of the TR8s. I've only seen one, the one that I have, but I understand that there's another one out there which I've never been able to identify where it is. But appreciate your show, sir. Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you for calling. And yeah, if you can send us, Jay, if you've got someplace, or if you want to send them to me, I can forward them to you guys, whatever you want to do.
Very, very simple. It's K8CJY at ARRL.org.
Is that org or
With
net?
the CJY?
K8CJY, right?
K8CJY at ARRL.net.
.net.
All right, I'll send you some information.
Good. Thank you very much.
Very good.
Thank you
so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Appreciate your show.
All right. Have a good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. All right.
Thanks
well,
for
there
calling.
we go, guys. We can add to it. So, all right. Well, we've got another call, so let's see if we can take another call. Good evening. Welcome to Ham Talk Live.
Good evening. My name is Peter, BE7 Papa Sierra in Grand Forks, British Columbia, right on the U.S. border, about halfway across the province. And
good evening. Thanks for calling.
Wanted to say, it's been entertaining. Drake has been part of my life since 1970, February of 1970, when I got my first Drake 2C. So, and unfortunately, it's gone a bit haywire since then, but that's fine. It's been a great love over the years. Lee and Jay, I want to thank you for giving this presentation tonight. Very informative. I have not been to the museum yet in Cincinnati, and I look forward to doing that. I've been to Dayton many, many times. Been involved with the forum, the Drake Forum there for many years, but have never made it down to the museum, the VoA museum. And next time we make it back to Xenia, count on it. I'll be there. So I do look forward to visiting. A couple of things I just wanted to mention. Sorry, go ahead.
Very good, Peter. I was going to mention that we have quite a bit of open house time starting on Thursday all the way through Sunday afternoon at the museum for the hams. And we even have some special tours of the 500 kilowatt transmitter at WLW. So the hams have a great time at the museum over the Hamvention weekend.
And I'll add, Peter, when you do come down, make sure you let me know, and I will make sure I'm there and will personally give you a tour. You can get my email off from QRZ. The call is K8CLI Kilo 8 Charlie Lima India, and just use the email in there.
Okay, thanks, guys. And I Lee, I think we've probably already contacted through Facebook, and I will do that for sure. That would be really nice. There's a couple other things. I'm also have been in the past part of the CCA group as well, and would love to see that Collins transmitter that you moved down there as well. Just a couple of things, Jay. You mentioned that the 4-line kind of wound up in 1974. Actually, it went through to 1979. So another 5 years after that, the last of the R4Cs came out in 1979, according to the serial number database that WB4HFN publishes.
Okay.
And I personally went with a friend of mine in December of 1978 to pick up his brand new R4C and FS4. He has one of the very latest ones. So just wanted to throw that by there. Also, I've got a question. I visited the factory many years ago. It's probably close to 20 years ago now, and was able to get a very quick tour. Not sure it was sanctioned, but was able to get through the tour. We actually saw the prototype L6 amplifier that I believe has ended up in Sindre's hands, Sindre Torp LA6OP over in Norway. The interesting part was that when I went there, I saw something in the display that appeared to be one of the product detectors that was made for the Collins 75A2 and 75A3 receiver. I had already picked up one of those because it just looked so much like a Drake to me. I thought this has got to be made by the Drake factory. I got it for next to nothing at a Hamfest one day. It's got to be 25 years ago now. And I thought that was confirmed when it showed up when I visited the display in the lobby at the factory and saw it there. I thought that confirmed it, but I guess memory's fuzzy. I'm just wondering if you guys have seen that there by any chance.
So I had a 75A2 with a product detector, and many of those came from Universal Electronics up in Columbus, Ohio. And I wouldn't be a bit surprised if Gibby didn't have Bob Drake build those for him, but they actually, I believe, sold them under their Universal brand.
Yeah, I understand they were sold under the Universal brand, but I highly suspect they were made by Drake.
Yeah, I have no proof of that, but you're probably quite correct, because there was a strong relationship between Bob and Gibby.
Okay. Well, if that product detector shows up in the displays there, the equipment that you have for the displays someday, maybe that will confirm that. I'm pretty sure I saw one there when I visited in 2000 or 2001 or 2, somewhere back around then. That's a question that's been bugging me for years. I still have the product detector. For what I don't know, I don't have a 75A2 or a 3. I've got a 1 and a 4, actually 3 of the 75A4s. Interesting enough, my 75A4s and the KWS1 sit very proudly next to my little 1A, number 457, which outperforms the 75A4s. And the CCA guys are going to kill me, but I'm sorry, for a 20-pound box, it's just unbelievable. It's an amazing little receiver.
Yes,
Peter, I can confirm that product detector. I was reading a document written by Bill Frost a couple days ago, and in his history with Drake, he does talk about the product detectors they made for Collins. So it's in the documentation.
Great. That was Jay, right? Is that Jay?
No, that's Lee.
That's Lee.
That's Lee. He
okay.
made.
Okay, Lee.
Yeah, it's in. If you go online and Google or search for Bill Frost, he's the service manager. Was the service manager.
No, I know Bill.
Okay, well, Bill wrote a very nice history of Drake, and you can download it. It shows up very quickly on a search. Download that, and you'll see that he talks about that product detector in his history document.
Okay, I think I have seen that, but I don't remember reading about that. I'll have to take a look at that again. I appreciate that. Okay. Well, okay, that's about all I've got, guys. I want to thank you for doing this. It's always exciting seeing something like this presented about the R.L. Drake Company, and I appreciate being a part of it. And thanks, everyone.
Thanks for stopping by, Peter.
Yeah, thanks for calling.
Yep.
Thanks for calling in.
Yeah, and if you get down to Hamvention, by all means, go to the museum. I go every year on Saturday night and really enjoy it, and kind of help move some people in and out of there. So if you get a chance, make sure you stop by. And Lee, you said you were Lee, I think you were able to confirm, right, that this is the largest single collection.
Yes, it's the largest physical collection in the world for R.L. Drake equipment. No question about it.
All right. Well, thanks so much for the call. We appreciate it.
Take care. 7-3.
All right. You too. 7-3. All right. Well, we'll see if we have more calls. I'm not seeing any tweets here. So let's see if we have anybody else lined up in the phone bank here. And if not, we're going to finish things up. Although I will say Jocelyn KD8VRX says hello by text. So we'll throw that in. Okay, guys, I think we're through everything, and we're way over time. So let's take some final comments. Go ahead, Lee.
I'll make a final comment. The gentleman that just called in Bill Frost's history paper, it's on page 2. So download that document by Bill Frost, and then the product detector that they made for Collins is on page 2. But other than that, thanks for having us on, Neil. Appreciate it. Been a great program.
Okay, and Lee,
Neil,
remind everybody how they can check out the museum.
Yep, come on down every Saturday and Sunday, 1 to 4 p.m. And if you plan to come in, if you're out of town particularly, look me up on QRZ, the K8CJY. My email is accurate. And let me know, and I will for sure be there to give you a personal tour.
And it's voamuseum.org. And Jay, go right ahead.
Okay, I would just point out if you want to learn a little bit more about Drake, there's a great book out called A Family Affair, the R.L. Drake story. It's written by a fellow that I worked with for many years, John Lockmiller, KB9AT. John came out of the broadcast industry, and we worked together at Midwest Communications many years back. But he has done a great job of documenting some of the history and pulling together some other notes about the various products, including some tips on that. And I'd also point out, you had Rob Sherwood on last week. Rob and I grew up together. He's originally from the Cincinnati area, and he has done a great job of providing some upgrades for particularly the R4 C-line receivers. One of the R4s that I have has been fully upgraded with all of his mods and kits. So there's a lot of folks out there that support the, if you will, the refurbishment of some of the 4-line gear, and it's a great hobby. I got into refurbishing some of this stuff shortly after I retired, and did a lot of work not only on my own gear but equipment for other hams. I don't do that anymore, but it was a lot of fun for a number of years. And Lee, thanks for your great input, and Neil, I appreciate having us on board tonight.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for being here, and found out all kinds of things tonight. So we really appreciate you being here. And, of course, we feature the Voice of America Museum every chance we get. Again, it's voamuseum.org. And if you get a chance, come visit. We'd love to see you there. And Hamvention is always a good time to do that. Just a little drive in the evening, and the doors are open. So come on down to the Voice of America Museum of Broadcasting in Westchester. Well, that is a wrap for this week's edition of Ham Talk Live. Thanks to my guests, Jay Adrick, K8CJY, and Lee Hite, K8CLI, and everyone out there in cyberspace for listening and calling in, and invite you back next Thursday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, when Marcel Strieber, AI6MS, will be here to talk about remote license testing. And for a list of all of our upcoming guests, just go to hamtalklive.com. And if you like Ham Talk Live, please consider leaving us a review on iTunes or wherever you listen. It helps others find us faster. And now we may have to do equal time here. We may have to do a call-in show. I don't know. Well, we'll see how that goes. So for now, this is Neil Rapp, WB9VPG, saying 7375, and may the good DX be yours.